Good evening. This is the evening session of the 10th Annual Regulators and Policymakers Retreat being held in Goa by IPPI and Aviation Watch. And with me is Mr. Jayant Kavle. Welcome to the show, Mr. Kavle.
Good evening.
Sir, you are the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Power, Government of India. And sir, in that capacity, we'd like you to inform our viewers that the Ministry of Power has in fact got an ambitious target of Power for All by 2012. So how are we planning to meet this target given the fact that we have fuel supply uncertainties and a whole lot of other uncertainties, the economic downturn?
The Power for All by 2012 firstly means that we provide access to electricity to all by 2012. Roughly 45% of our population doesn't have access to electricity. So it means creating infrastructure, what we call the rural electricity backbone. That will involve substations, it will involve transformers in every hamlet. It will also involve giving connections to below poverty line families free of charge under the Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana. So the question of course is correct that how do we ensure that everybody gets power and not just lines and wires. Of course at the same time efforts are on to ensure that in this current plan 78,000 megawatt of additional power generation capacity comes online, and we are confident that that will happen. So with that, our current per capita consumption of electricity of about 650 units or kilowatt hours per capita per year is supposed to go up to 1,000, which is nothing compared to the developed world.
Right.
Right.
Sir, given the fact that every country would like to incentivize renewable energy, or for example environmentally safe energy. But in India we have some very typical problems wherein because electricity, not only is electricity a concurrent subject but even land say is a state subject. So whenever we have a project developer going to develop a particular hydro project, there are problems in environmental clearances, land clearances, and not to mention the fact that there could be a risk of monsoon failure or hydrological risks as you were saying. So how can we incentivize hydropower generation in such a way that it becomes a very economically viable means of generation?
See, incentivizing hydropower does not mean that you overlook the rights and privileges of local people. If as a result of that hydropower becomes slightly more expensive than it otherwise would have been, then so be it. But even then, ultimately it has to compete with thermal power.
Absolutely.
Now we still don't have that system whereby we disincentivize thermal power, put a carbon tax. We have not accepted that position internationally, that we will accept a carbon tax thermal power and incentivize hydropower. That system does not exist as of now, because still it is not necessary. Still you have hydropower projects which can, in spite of all this, can compete fairly well in the market. What really is required for hydropower is long-term finance, because you see the initial capital expenditure in a hydropower project is very high. As a result, the initial tariff is very high, and as the loans get repaid, then there is virtually no expenditure because the rest is God given.
Absolutely.
So after 10-15 years when the loans are repaid, the tariff comes down drastically. So instead of doing that, we can spread it out over a much longer period so that people don't feel the initial pinch. That is what is required for hydropower. And we are working on that, on providing long-term finance for hydropower.
So what is the status of financing in the country, in the sense that given the recent economic downturn and indeed the problem of finding long-term finance for such capital-intensive long gestation projects, is it possible for us to use more exotic or different options like project finance, off-balance sheet financing, and other ways of raising money to fund these long-term schemes?
One is now wary of exotic financing means, but you have takeout financing, which means that the initial lender gives the loan for, let's say, 12 years, 15 years, and some other lender steps in after those that initial 10-15 years is over. That is takeout financing. And you have institutions such as the Life Insurance Corporation who have long-term funds at their disposal. Pension funds basically have long-term funds at their disposal. Right? So we need to ensure how exactly these funds can be mobilized for long gestation projects like hydropower.
So, given the fact that we will now be importing electricity from Bhutan, what sort of developments do you see? How much electricity can we import from our neighboring countries, and whether this will provide a means of fostering better ties with our neighboring countries?
Certainly, I mean, Bhutan in any case is a shining example of something that is mutually beneficial for both the countries. Very large proportion of their GDP, their total national income, comes from export of power to India. And as a result, their per capita income has gone up substantially in the recent past. And that is just with import of 1400 megawatt of power as of now. Our Prime Minister last May, that is May 2008, he had in his visit to Bhutan, he has announced that we will import 10,000 megawatt by 2020. And we are working towards that. We have identified projects, the detailed project reports are getting ready. We have identified the central public sector undertakings who will do those projects. We are fully geared up to do that. So with that, you can imagine the kind of economic benefit that our neighboring country will get, and we will get that power.
It's pretty interesting because when I was interviewing Dr. Ranjit Pereira, who is the head of the Public Commission and Public Utilities Commission Sri Lanka, he was telling me that India is the most favored nation for setting up nuclear power projects in Sri Lanka, and he's inviting, in the process of inviting India for doing the same. So, do you see this as actually, given the fact that India has troubled relations with some of its neighbors, that energy ties like these, which are difficult to break off and which make us economically interdependent on each other, will foster better international relations?
Well, certainly. I mean, Bhutan should be a shining example, which can be replicated in Nepal if the conditions are right. And Nepal, in fact, is, I would say, in a better position because their projects are closer to our load centers. The transmission costs will be less. Plus, we have, in case of rivers emanating from Nepal, issue of flood control, etc. So there are more benefits than one, not just power, but also flood control. So we can work towards that for mutual benefit, certainly.
Great, sir.